Hello. I would like to show you a brief day in the life of using Linux. To accomplish this, I am recording this video of my desktop using OBS Studio. OBS Studio works by taking snapshots of your desktop and saving it to a video file you can later edit or stream. I chose to record my desktop in such a way as to maximize the detail captured on the screen. The settings I use for this are in the Recording tab under the Output section. I searched the web for ideal settings and then added my own touch where information was either sparse or I decided I spent enough time on the topic. In this case, my settings are to make maximum use of AMD hardware. My primary computer, which runs Debian, my Linux-based operating system of choice, uses an AMD Ryzen processor and AMD graphics hardware. I set a very high bitrate and the highest rendering quality OBS would allow. I did get a warning pop-up when I first did this that a lossless, maximum quality file can generate as much as 7 gigabytes per minute. That usually gives me pause for a while as I consider if I really want to do that or not. In years past, when I tried that setting on computers running Intel U-series processors, I had issues. Years of issues attempting to maximize settings on Intel U-series processors pretty much set up a muscle memory in me to avoid it in general. So I have 1 terabyte of persistent SSD storage, which allows large file sizes, given that I do not keep long-term copies of the work in progress videos. I only keep the ultimate final cuts. I decided recently to try again and go all the way with the settings for AMD hardware and to see what I can accomplish. I put in a safeguard to split the work in progress videos into 4-minute chunks. The reason I chose 4 minutes is because that lets me keep the work in progress video file sizes under 4 gigabytes, making them compatible with most USB flash drives and other storage devices. At the same time, when I edit the same video across laptops, desktops, tablets, and phones, it makes the video chunks easier to move around and to adjust them to time markers in a video so that those time markers are more manageable when editing, cutting, and splitting. During the editing, when I'm combining them into the final cut, I find that these chunks make it a little easier. So when I go into the file system and I look in the folder where I told OBS to save the work in progress videos, I can see the initial file for this video, and it's growing every few seconds as OBS saves the file in real time. The other benefit of this is the RAM usage in OBS is constant and more manageable. I do want a setting in a future version of OBS that would allow all the video to stay in RAM and main memory and save it to disk as it flips to the next file. Whether that happens or not, I'm still pleased with the automatic file naming, splitting, and rotation feature. So let's observe this file rollover in real time because I think it's cool. When the seconds clock at the top of the screen flips over to 00, the current work in progress file will be complete and the new 4-minute work in progress file will be created at that exact same moment. So while we're waiting for that to flip over, I just want to let you know that this is, for me, part of the ordinary workflow on a computer in 2023 because in 2020, more people had to use video-based solutions like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and others, right? And so being able to work with video became more necessary, right? And we see the video file flip over at the 00 marker. So let's get a little bit more ordinary than ordinary, right? So editing documents, spreadsheets, presentations, brochures, and the like, those are ordinary aspects in the 2020 and pre-2020 way of doing things on computers for millions of people, right? And so many Linux environments that you install for the desktop situation comes pre-installed with a document editor, a spreadsheet editor, and a presentation editor. This is LibreOffice Writer, for example. It's one of many such tools that you can get to edit documents, save them to Word formats, open Microsoft Word formats, export to PDF. And so I find LibreOffice Writer to be very useful and it stays up to date, so I don't have to maintain subscriptions with word editing, document editing type solutions, right? This is LibreOffice Impress, and the name means to impress people with a presentation. So, you know, aside from the pun, I find LibreOffice Impress to be pretty useful, right? And then this is LibreOffice Draw, which allows you to do brochure-like things that's similar to Microsoft Publisher or Adobe InDesign. So it's pretty cool, right? So I like all of those tools being available on the Linux environments, because not only does it save a lot of time, but again, you're able to have up-to-date versions of these programs and do the type of basic tasks on a computer. And when I'm using a Linux environment, I'm pretty much using these environments on a regular basis. I don't do software development every day. I maybe do software development 20 to 30 hours in a month, right? All the other hours that we have in a month, I'm pretty much daily going through web browsers and accessing documents and doing those kinds of things. So one of the areas that I'm very pleased with when it comes to the Linux environments is updates. You can do automatic updates, but I like to do my updates manually. And the reason is that no matter what platform you're on, updates do have a history of taking the system in a dysfunctional direction, right? And so doing manual updates gives me the opportunity to observe if I want to even do the updates, or if I even have time to do the update based on the amount of gigabytes involved. And it also allows me to have control over the updates if I'm somewhere where there's public Wi-Fi, or I'm on a cellular connection, and I want to be mindful of when I'm using data and how much data I'm using. So doing an update is very simple. You open the terminal, as I just did, and you type sudo apt update. And what that does is it pulls in the list of all the updates that are available at the present moment. And it's just updating the list of updates, right? So that the computer knows what updates are out there. It doesn't actually update your computer. You have to do sudo apt upgrade as a second step to actually get those updates applied. I don't have any updates right now, but I like to check every couple of days just to see what's out there. And then if I want to install software, I just do sudo apt install, and in this case, I'm going to install the Chromium browser. So this gives me a list of all the things that are involved in installing Chromium. I'm going to choose yes, and when I do so, it's going to pull down all the relevant software to put Chromium on my computer. Chromium is the web browser that Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome is based on. And so the Google Chrome browser is maintained by a largely open source community of software developers who make the Chrome technology freely available to everyone who wants to use it. Let's use this Chrome browser. Just installed it. And so before I do that, I want to cycle through the main menu and pin the Chromium browser to the dash at the bottom, and then move the icon next to Firefox. I like to do that on all my systems, whether it's Windows, Mac, or Linux. I like to have all the browsers grouped together. And so this allows me to do that. And I thought this was funny the first time I saw it. When I launched Chromium, which was originally a Google project, it now defaults to DuckDuckGo search engine. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think that definitely represents symbolically that the Chromium project is under the direction of those that espouse open source in a more complete and full way, and who are driving the Chromium browser's evolution, not from the standpoint of a corporation, but from the standpoint of what the open source software developers see as the best direction. And I decided to go to Ars Technica, one of my favorite news websites. I haven't set up my newsreader program that I talk about in my other videos yet on this new install of Debian, but rest assured I will here shortly. Not in this video, but at some point in the near future. And so, as you can see, the Chromium browser, it works as you would expect a web browser to work in the year 2023. And I like to go into the settings and take a glance at what options are available. I always recommend that a person customize their apps and software to the extent it's possible, because that allows you to make the program relevant to you, personal to you, and it gives you a better idea of what all is possible and available in the app or in the software program. And so the two areas I like to look at, generally speaking, is security and performance. And so I do like that we have some security features in Chromium that can be selected and toggled by the person that's using the Chromium browser that's installed. And so I think that's very, very useful to be able to peer into the intricacies of whether we're using SSL certificates or we are maintaining history or clearing out history automatically. I will say that, in my opinion, Firefox or Mozilla's approach to these types of settings and customizations, I think, are a little bit better. I like the setting in Firefox where you can go into the security and privacy section, and when it asks you about history, you can set the setting to never remember, and then it will cause the browser to restart, and you have a browser that is a little bit more security oriented with that setting. I haven't seen the same thing in the Chromium based browsers, and I will admit I haven't looked hard enough because I don't use Chromium based browsers that often, except in a day job or something like that. I do use Chromium based browsers in my personal computers, but I use them in a very specific kind of way where the security setup of those browsers is not as important as it is when I'm using the Mozilla-based browsers, right? This performance setting you see here is important because it's turned on by default in Microsoft Edge, and I don't like it because I noticed that it doesn't allow the websites to run as well as they should. And maybe that'll change over time as websites adapt to that setting, but I think that the websites themselves should be designed and developed better in the first instance. And so as we get software reined in and adjusted to work more smoothly, I think we'll have a better situation in the future. So when it comes to video editing, right, and again in 2023, more people than even 4 years ago are involved with that and on various levels. In the Linux-based environments, I've tried different video editors, and I know people like Kdenlive. I like Shotcut. Shotcut works for me, and after several years of using it, I now have muscle memory with Shotcut, and I may eventually try some other things, but I like using Shotcut, and it has a lot of granularity that I appreciate. And so the features that you can use for Shotcut also can tap into AMD hardware, or if you have Intel and NVIDIA, it can do that as well. But I like the fact that I can get hardware-based acceleration when I am going through the video rendering process, going through the video editing process, and I think that helps me to produce a better result. I do have a workflow where I like to tune the final video that's exported here through Apple devices. I do that as a quality control check so that those that are going to view the videos on mobile will be able to see the videos in the proper quality aspect ratio and color grading. And so that's something that I do as an extra step to make sure that I have appropriate quality settings on the video. If you go back years ago, my original videos were done on a DSLR camera, and I always found that the grainy aspects of those cameras, even if you set them just right, they never quite matched the resolution of recording the video through a smartphone and then editing that smartphone video here on the desktop in Linux through a program like Shotcut, I found that gives a much better result. And as you see me go through and flow through using Shotcut, you see that I am cutting sections of the video, right? I also have the ability to reorient different sections of the video. And so I think that's pretty cool, and I definitely appreciate that aspect of Shotcut and the video editing capabilities that it provides. Text editing is extremely important, and it's generally a very underappreciated area of operating systems in general. Here I have gedit, which is similar to Notepad in Microsoft Windows. And then you can get plugins for gedit that makes it almost on par with Notepad++ in Windows, right? There's this tool in Windows that you can get. It's an open source program called Notepad++. Works extremely well, and I really like it. And I haven't invested the type of research and time to see if I can get even more parity with Notepad++ in the Linux-based environment. But I'm confident that at some point when it becomes a priority for me, I will. But I've been able to use gedit for almost 8 years, and I've had very few complaints about it. So graphics editing, I like to use Inkscape. And Inkscape is very similar to Adobe Illustrator. Yes, I know how personal this particular topic can be, and I know people will give a million reasons why Inkscape is not qualified to compete with Adobe Illustrator. But I beg to differ, because it's not the tool that defines the artist, it's the artist that defines the tool. And here's my secret weapon, screen ruler. And yeah, this is called screen ruler, but screen rulers in general, I've used screen rulers in Windows as well as Linux. And it is my secret weapon when it comes to graphics design and graphics manipulation, because there is no substitute to being able to get pixel precise measurement of the elements that are on the screen, where you're trying to set up just the right level of layout, space, topography, and even colors are affected by measurement in terms of the distance between one gradient to another, or where a certain block of elements and their colors reside on a screen relative to another. Yes, I did go to the Art Institutes of Pittsburgh and study interactive media design, right? But I've always been an artist ever since, ages ago, early childhood, all the way into early adulthood, and now that has kept on for well over 40 years in different stages, right? And so I like Inkscape in that it gives you many different options to do treatment on color, whether you come from a color theory standpoint or you're one that subscribes to some of the writings of the Pantone Institute, and you're into making sure that your output is going to match up well from a screen to a print point of view, right? Inkscape has those features, right? Not to the level of detail and intricacy that Adobe InDesign and Adobe Illustrator has, but it's sufficient when we're talking about using inkjet printers, laser printers in the home or in a small office or a regular business, right? Many people elect to go that way. And if you're using FedEx Office, for example, as your mass printer of choice, or Office Max, Office Depot, I still don't know what name they are, but you can get that type of color treatment in tools, in the open source tools like Inkscape, right? And when you're doing mock-ups or you're doing full-on brochures that you are really going in depth with, or you're doing layout designs, whether for the web, for desktop, for mobile apps, for social media, for thumbnails, you name it, and you're getting really granular with it, and you even use automation through AI or whatever, but you need to just really touch it up and go that last mile with it. This is a great tool for doing that. And if you look at one of my earlier videos a couple of weeks ago, I don't show how to use this ruler per se, but I definitely show some aspects of Inkscape that are useful. Gimp, in my opinion, is an Adobe Photoshop replacement. Okay? Now, I know some like to use Krita, K-R-I-T-A, and I've tried Krita. Krita is good, and it is far more extensive than Gimp. But what I like about Gimp is it has a balance between performance, right? Like it loads up very quickly, okay? And you can do a lot of the major things, and I'm talking about broad areas, in this tool that you can do in Photoshop, right? Now, when you get super granular with layers and blending and that sort of thing, okay, I grant you, Adobe Photoshop is great. But if you know how to use Gimp and you invested time in it, and you can, apply it, then you don't have an annual subscription that you are tethered to, and you have a lot of flexibility in terms of being able to use this tool in a variety of situations, including Microsoft Windows. So let's revisit these OBS settings, right? Because I want to see where we are with this work in progress video in particular. So I have the settings where it's maximizing the output for AMD hardware and AMD graphics cards, graphics GPU, right? So what that means is that there is hardware, okay, in the form of the AMD graphics card that knows how to translate video, decode it and encode it in real time, that is going to give a much better treatment in the finer aspects of the video than you will see just running off of the computer's processor and RAM alone. So let's navigate to the work in progress videos, and you see that based on my settings, 4-minute intervals, I have several videos that have been generated, and these all can be easily transported to a USB flash drive. I actually think that this is pretty good setting that I came up with. It's actually the first time that I've set it up in this particular, for this particular video, for my videos. And so I've usually gone with a duration like 15 minutes, but I think 4 minutes works pretty well. You can get VLC video player in a Linux environment, and this video player will allow you to play videos that you have on the storage device on the computer. And so I want to use VLC to look at and review one of these work in progress videos. So let's watch a video of the video that is being recorded right now. And as you can see, VLC is very competent and very capable when it comes to this process. So it plays back video, it plays it very well, and as I look at the different capabilities with video in particular, editing graphics, editing photos, and even the more routine things like browsing the web and editing documents and spreadsheets and presentations, we see that we have many capabilities in the Linux-based environment to do the things that we need to do. And it's really a good thing to have VLC to play video, because believe me, when you don't have that, that is a huge limitation. As limitations go, we see that Linux has features on par with the other operating systems that may be more familiar, and you can do many of those same things you do in those environments in the Linux environment. So I hope you found this walkthrough very insightful, informative, and inspiring. Let me know if you have any questions.